Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to give my thoughts on this flat apex trigger for the Sig P320. Just the trigger shoe in this case. They do make an entire kit replacement for the trigger, but I just wanted to go with just this because I wanted to try out a flat trigger. Haven't used one in the past and just see how it compares to the standard curved trigger, which is what I had on here earlier. And I used that for a little bit over a year, so I have a fair bit of time behind the standard trigger on this. To start, I'll go ahead and talk about the installation. This is another video where I'm not going to show the installation. I'm not too familiar with how to change out parts on the P320, so I did have to consult another video in this case to do it. And I would highly recommend, link will be in the description below, there's a video by Sig Guy. Incredibly well explained and detailed and very good close-up camera angles and shots on how to change out the entire trigger mechanism, the bar and all of that. In my case, I just did the shoe, which is very simple, and it's not hard to install this. I had to rewatch it a few times just to make sure I didn't mess anything up, but if you're familiar with how to do this, you could easily get this done in a few minutes tops. Now for a few points of comparison, for a few of the other triggers I was considering purchasing, I was looking at the, I believe it's pronounced Keras Dynamic trigger, which is a little bit more curved, and the main reason I didn't go with that one is on the trigger, on the front of the trigger itself, you have this sort of a bar in the front, which they say is to help you get a more consistent trigger finger placement, because you can feel where that bar is, and I can see that. But I was also a bit concerned that that might feel a little weird. I've never shot a trigger like that before, so I wasn't sure if it would be particularly comfortable. And another one I was comparing it to was the Tyrant, which reason I didn't go with that one is it is a little bit more curved, so I wasn't sure if that would make much of a difference compared to just a standard Sig trigger. And then the last one I was comparing it to is Sig Sauer's OEM flat trigger, which also looks pretty decent, though it looks like it has a bit more of an angle to it compared to the Apex one, but that might be a pretty decent option too. But ultimately, the reason I went with the Apex is it's the most just pretty flat standard trigger as far as I could find, just because that's what I was looking for, was just kind of a flatter trigger. But to compare this to the older trigger, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out to the range, and I'm just going to do an accuracy test, and we're going to see, I'm going to use some older targets and an older accuracy test that I did in the past as a point of comparison to see if this makes any difference. Alright, so I'm out at the range here, have this trigger on as you can see. I'm going to be doing 10 rounds at 15 meters at that bullseye target back there, which you can hopefully see well enough, even though it is a bit backlit. And I'm going to be using this 115 grain Blazer ammo. It'll just be a good point of reference to compare how well I can shoot with this trigger versus that other one. This will be kind of, well, quite subjective. It just depends on what type of trigger fits you better, but we'll just see if this shoots any better. In my personal experience, I do tend to pull my shots on the handgun a little bit to the left, so we'll see if that helps at all with that. And I have been doing a bit of shooting with this trigger already, and you know, it's just a different trigger shoe, so nothing mechanically and internally has changed. And so far I've noticed that it feels like it has a bit of a longer reset, more in line with the VP9, which I've shot a fair bit of. However, this does have a little bit of a lighter trigger pull. I noticed I did a test with it on a trigger pull gauge, got about 4 pounds and 10 ounces, whereas before it was about 5.5. So a little bit lighter there, which is nice, but enough about that. I'm gonna fire now. I'm gonna do 10 rounds at that target right there. This is minor, but I'm using several magazines and I accidentally grabbed the wrong one, which only had 5 rounds in it. Another 5, then that'll be the 10. Okay, so I will cut to when I'm back and have these measured and just talk a bit over the target and review how we did. So here's the target. We have 9 shots here, and when I went up to the actual target, I could see that my 10th was pretty much right here. So not that far off either. And I'm going to be comparing this to a very similar accuracy test I did a little bit over a month ago when I was comparing my P320 to a VP9. a video I will have linked in the description below. And that was a very similar test at 15 meters as well, so it'll serve as a pretty good point of comparison. I didn't make any precise measurements there, and I'm not going to be here either. But you can see that comparing it to there, which I'll put up over here, it actually did, surprisingly, to me at least, help me to not pull my shot so far to the left. You can see here, I am still pulling a little bit to the left. That's something I need to train more on and stop doing, but this has helped a little bit to move them a bit more towards the center. You can see even the ones that have shot to the left are not shooting as far to the left as they were in that previous accuracy test when I was using the standard trigger. So to talk about a few other thoughts I have with this trigger so far, one thing that I mentioned out there, it does seem like the reset is longer. Had someone else shoot this as well, and they noted that it seemed like a longer reset too, so that is something to note there. However, what I did notice, and this is a little hard to describe in words, this is a purely subjective matter, but it does feel like, for me, that I am able to get a more consistent finger placement onto the trigger, and that it's more consistent for me shot to shot with my placement and all that. As far as the actual feel, in regards to everything else though, of course, this is just a trigger shoe replacement. In my case, that's all I did. So nothing else has changed. You got the same amount of, a little bit of slop here at the front, same as on the other trigger. Fair bit of just movement here until right there it tightens up quite a bit. And then to show the reset a little bit better here, you can see right there. So is it actually any different? Probably not, but it does feel like a longer reset, and it's something I had to get used to. But to close up and to just give my final thoughts on this, I actually quite like this trigger. When I first put it on here, it just seemed kind of whatever. It didn't make too much of a difference, but the more I've been practicing with this, both dry fire and live fire, definitely noticed it is a much more comfortable feel for me, and it's not that expensive of an upgrade either, at least as of the time I'm recording this video, so I'd say that it is definitely worth it. Yeah, I would recommend it. It has certainly been really good in my experience, and it's had more of an effect than I even really thought it would, because it's just a trigger shoe replacement. That covers it for everything I wanted to talk about on this trigger. So hopefully you all found this informative. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any other questions in the comments below. Other than that, I hope to see you all again in the next one. Take care.